I'm Eriksson. So here we are in Sweden. We are at Artipelag, an art museum on the outskirts of the capital Stockholm. There will be an exhibition called Signature Women, and it's about the heritage of the female art in Sweden. We're just outside the town of Båstad. We're in the countryside in the studio of the artist Emma Bernhard. And we're here to find out about her way of creating her very own art. If you were to explain for somebody that never saw your art, what would you say?
I think I would probably say I make something close to nothing. In a way it is something, and in another way it is actually nothing. I am striving to do something that is in that middle, like that little corridor of a lot of dynamic and a lot of stillness. Like there's something in between there that I want to find. I have said before that I make collages. I do try to take existing materials and make them something else. I try to take care of materials that come my way that don't have a place, and I try to remake them into something else.
How did you get into art in the first place?
I didn't think of myself as an artist ever. I still don't really. I started out painting in my basement at home, but then I studied philosophy and psychology, and I wasn't really into art at all, but I got into a school that I really wanted. I did a foundation because I needed a break from my normal studies, and then I got accepted to a school I really liked.
What in art triggers you to make art?
There's some art that I love, like I truly, truly love it, and it gets into my core that nothing else really does. And it's never the art I make on my own, but I like striving for that feeling, or like wanting to try to see if I can get close to it. So it's not, I don't even know if, it could have been anything, I think. I love writing. I'm not really good at writing, but I could have done it, I think. I want to see if I can find like a physical expression of something very dynamic and something very calm at once. Like, is there a middle ground somewhere where it's like very dynamic and very calm, and I want to stay there?
As a young artist then, going to school, trying to find your own language, how do you find your own language and your own inner voice?
I'm not sure I found it, but I think it's a process, right? You start somewhere. Like I studied sculpture, and I guess my paintings are quite sculptural in some way. And I started sculpture because I wanted to make, I don't know how to explain this really. I wanted to make something physical that I could take care of. Like as a kid, I used to collect like little things and make them like valuable to me. Like, oh, it could be anything, like scrap. And then I started studying sculpture, and it was the same thing. I started making these random things out of nothing, and I made up stories for them. And then the language kind of comes from starting somewhere, and I think I'm doing the exact same thing as I did as a kid, but just in another scale or in another way. But it's still the same thing. I still look at my stuff. Anything in here is not really valuable. It's just like pieces of fabric and not very fancy paint. And I create little stories for them. And I think that becomes my language, at least for myself, but I'm not sure it's the language for anybody else. But you have your aesthetic, and it kind of, I think, but it's hard to be true to your intuition, isn't it? I mean, it's a balance. All of a sudden you're off, and you're doing something, and you think, oh, this was great, and then you come back to it 2 weeks later, and it's like, oh, this wasn't me.
Finding your own language or your own way of creating things, you also create your own world or your own universe, so to speak. Can you define your own universe or your own stories?
In my studio, I feel like everything in here, like, they're not people. I know they're not. But to me, it's like, oh, you're here. Like this, can I take an example?
Yeah.
Like this one here, it's made out of 2 pieces of wool, and you can't tell the difference unless you feel it. But to me, I found this one, and it has stains on it, so nobody wanted it. And I was like, oh. And this one nobody wanted because of other reasons. And then I feel like I need to take care of them. So I need to like put them up and make something of them and create their own value, because they're not valuable. So I want to make their story so they have a home. It makes me sound crazy, I know this. So then, yeah, and I make the frames, and so then they belong somewhere. And I do that. I tend to do that a lot of things. Like I can't buy new furniture because I need to buy old ones, so I take care of scrappy. Maybe I'm really shy also, so in a way I'm in here with all my little stuff, and it's not as crazy as it sounds, but I have that feeling.
You're the big caretaker, as I understand. But how do you find the stories? How do you find who needs to be taken care of?
I started out with juxtaposing things I found, like making something valuable because it was together with something else, like a collage thing, but with sculptures, that together they were something, like they found a mate. And I think if I can find something that I really like, and it can be like a piece of wax. It could be anything, and somehow I really like it. I think that's more of like an aesthetic thing, like, oh, that looks, but it could look like nothing to somebody else, but it clicks somewhere in me. And then I collect them and I keep them in the studio. I have in the back room here, I'm filled with like stuff. And then I go and I thought, oh, now I found a piece for you. And then I put them together and they become something. So that's more instinct, I think.
The instinct is very important for all artists, I guess. Intuitively going ahead and making something from stuff, as you say, and make it become art. When do you think that transformation happens, going from stuff to becoming art? What do you add?
That's the thing, though. That's something that really interests me, because that has to do with value, and it's just subjective. It's just, now I've decided it's valuable. You can have something lying on the floor and then you put it on a plinth and it's valuable. It doesn't, the value doesn't change. It's your interpretation of it that changes. And so I don't think it value changes. It's just, to me it's the story. If I give it a story, then its value changes. But it's just, it's made up. And there's something with that made up value that disturbs me. Value always exists on a scale, and that scale is quite dangerous. But I think to me it's the stories that I make up that make them valuable. But I don't want to say that they become valuable, because they don't. But then they do.
Creating that value within the art, I guess it's the story behind it. And what kind of stories are you telling?
I don't think I'm actually telling a story, but I think I want to tell a story. I want to make things that aren't valuable. Nobody saw you, but now you can be seen. Like I feel sorry for the wool that nobody wanted. In a way, I really do. And I find these pieces of wax that were thrown away, and I feel like, oh, but you don't belong here. You need a context. If you put something into a context, they become valuable. And I think that's the storytelling, that I want to put them into a context and make them something they were not, without actually changing them that much.
The stories that you are telling, do you also give them a name, a title?
I don't give them a title, and I would give them a title, I would give them a number, because I want them to be valuable, but I want them to be individual, but I want them to be in a community. I started out doing soldiers a long time ago that I called painting soldiers. And it's because they're important in their own right, but they can't exist without the other. So I want them to be individuals, but I want them more to be part of something else. There's maybe an anger in me that I don't want to give them a name, because a lot of things we don't give names, we just give things numbers. So maybe there's it's not because of them I don't want to give them a name, because maybe I have a name for them. It annoys me a lot with all these numbers we read, and the people behind the numbers disappear, and I kind of want to not give them names, because they become too personal if I would give them names.
Being the caretaker of the stories, taking care of the material, how long do you take care of it?
I mean, I can have pieces of wool or something in my studio forever, and trying to find the right place for it for a long time. But when I found the right place, when I feel like, okay, this is your spot, then I'm kind of done. I think that I'm not very attached to it once I'm done. Like, I found your place, okay, now you can go.
It's a bit like you give birth to the art, and then it grows up, and then they can find their own way out in the world.
They do exist. I don't give birth because they exist. They were just lost. It's like more of a therapy session. No, but like it's more of a, you were lost, I found you, I'll try to make it better, and then you can go. Because I tend, we're talking about intuition, or I tend to overwork things, even though now you look around, it's like, oh, it's very not overworked, but I really tend to, and I need to always restrain myself from working, so I need to let go. If I keep them around, I'm gonna lose because I need to stop myself from from overdoing it, so then it needs to be done. And then I don't feel anything.
You've been trained as a sculptor, but I can see on many of your work, you're also a very good painter. Do you see there is a border between sculpture and painting, or does it mix up and go together?
I think my paintings are quite sculptural, and because I can't paint, they are quite sculptural, I think. And I started out painting because I was going to paint my sculptures. Starting
off with your work, it doesn't matter if it's going to end up as something on a canvas, or if it's going to be three-dimensional. It doesn't matter for you. You just start to find the story first.
Yeah, but I do have periods. I have where there's during a certain amount, I only paint, and then I only do sculptures. I rarely do them at the same time, but they kind of feed off each other, right? In here, when I'm bored of painting, I need to do a sculpture. But it does work in the same way. I do start with the same premises of trying to find something that needs to be there, or kind of see them all as part of one thing.
Now you have found your own language, you have found your own stories, you have created fantastic pieces here. Where will you go from now?
My dream is to make a dance film or movie. I want to make something with dance. I've been dreaming about it for years, and it would be amazing but I need to find the right people, and I need to find somebody to do it with, but that's what I would love to do, if I'm lucky.
What in dance would you do?
But there's something in that move, I call these my dancers, because there's something in the movement, the stillness of the movement that I'm trying to find with my paintings that I think exists actually already in dance. And I've always been really fascinated with dance in general.
Do you think that there is a specific Swedish female art?
I don't know. I haven't lived there. I didn't study in Sweden. I don't know a lot about Swedish art.
If you were to give an advice to a young person that wants to become an artist like yourself, what would you say?
To just go straight ahead, not be scared, and just decide to do it and not think twice. Because I think once you start thinking, it's done. I think you just go.